Okay, it is now 3 o'clock, and we wish not to further delay. First and foremost, I would like, on behalf of Tindak Malaysia, we would like to welcome all of you here today to our public webinar, PACA in the post-GE14 era. PACA stands for Polling Agent and Counting Agent. As we are in a different paradigm, and also we have a different election commission, irrespective of what you think about the composition and the attitude, we must update ourselves on how do you monitor the election process. And we would like all the members here and also those who are watching FB Live to be acquainted with the changes that took place after GE14. For example, the voters who are from the disability community, the OKU voters, are now channeled to Saluran 1. So hence, as PACA in Saluran 1, you need to be aware of this. And secondly, we also need to be aware that in coming elections, it is going to be done in the atmosphere of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some changes have taken place that you could see in the Chini by-election, Slim by-election, and Sabah state elections. And also at the same time, we also like all of you to refresh and also acquire back some of your knowledge of the PACA of the pre-GE14 era, because there are some issues that seems to reappear. The question is, if there is an issue, if there is a violation, if there is some malpractice, we would like you to be ready to stand up for the integrity of the election process. So today, I would like to introduce you our two speakers and our discussant. Our two speakers today are Fork Yow Leong and Jan Chow. So the first presenter will be Fork. So Fork is a Tindak Malaysia activist. He's currently serves as a private law tutor. He was previously a law lecturer for several private colleges. He has also worked for several international organizations and NGOs like the International Committee of the Red Cross and Save the Children in Cambodia. Mr. Fork also was involved as a polling agent and counting agent during GE14. He also currently serves as Tindak Malaysia's Primary Supervisor for our new Student Apprentice program. Under this program, we trained 2 students to familiarize election laws, particularly the conduct of elections. After all, PACA revolves on this law called the conduct of elections. I will introduce Jan after Fork's presentation, and I will be stop sharing this screen for the moment, and I will be presenting on behalf of Fork. So just bear with me. So Fork, you just need to signal to me, just say change slide or change the point as we proceed. So Fork will speak for half an hour until 3:35. Then we will take a short 30-second break before we proceed to Jan's presentation.
Okay,
so over to you, Fork.
Okay, thank you very much to Danesh, the moderator. So I will be presenting on the first session of the webinar. So welcome to all of you. So what I would like to do today is actually to share with you some key issues of concern. Okay, as the moderator, Mr. Danesh, has said, there has been a lot of development since the post GE14 era. So given the time limit, I will propose to at least address 6 key issues of concern. Okay, that polling agents and counting agents need to take note of. So the next slide. Thank you, Danesh. Can you hear me, everyone? Yeah, I think. Yeah. Okay, polling agent. Okay, I would just like to start off by just explaining very briefly what is a polling agent and a counting agent. Okay, just in case for those of you who are not familiar. or haven't been a polling agent or a counting agent before. So very quickly, what is the PACA? The word PACA, P-A-C-A. Next slide. Yeah, it refers, PA stands for the polling agent and CA stands for the counting agent. Now, they are actually appointed, the polling agents and the counting are appointed by an election agent, yeah, who is actually, who represents a candidate or political party or an independent candidate, okay, that is important. They are appointed. And as far as the role of PACA is concerned, okay, they have a very important role in elections because their role and responsibility is primarily to observe and monitor the polling process, okay, the entire. So the polling agent, okay, there are two types of agents. The polling agent would be responsible for observing and monitoring the polling, okay, what goes on during polling, okay, when it starts until it ends, okay. And the counting agent will come in next, okay, to observe and monitor the counting of the votes, okay, after the polling has closed, right? That is briefly the role of PACAs. Next. Now, just to briefly explain the qualifications, okay, for those of you who are interested, okay, to become a PACA, okay. Now, what are the qualifications? Yeah, I think this is quite straightforward. You must be a Malaysian citizen who is aged 21 years and above. The next requirement, yeah, you mustn't be a bankrupt, okay, or a discharged bankrupt. And of course, you mustn't be convicted for any kind of offense, okay, involving dishonesty and violence, yeah. And of course, the next qualification, or rather, this is actually a disqualification if you mustn't be convicted or released from prison for any offense under the Election Offences Act. So very briefly, just the qualifications for those of you who are not familiar. Next slide. Thank you. Now, I'd like to share with you some of the key laws and guides, okay, that you need to refer to. Okay, it will be very useful. You you have a working knowledge. You don't need a detailed knowledge, at least to have some understanding about the key laws. So among the key laws for polling agents and counting agents are as follows. The next slide. Yeah, the Election Offences Act is very important. Okay, or in bahasa, Akta Kesalahan Pilihan Raya, and the Election Conduct of Elections Regulations Act, or in the BM, Peraturan Perjalanan Pilihan Raya 1981. These two laws are very election laws are relevant because they have many sections and regulations that concerns polling agent and counting agent. And just briefly, other laws and guides that might be useful is, of course, to just very briefly understand what is the role and function of the Election Commission, okay, which is, of course, the Election Commission, or we call in bahasa the Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya, is responsible for the conducting elections, yeah, in Malaysia, whether it is general elections or any by-elections or state elections, okay, for the Dewan Undangan Negeri, yeah. Yeah. And for counting agents, okay, it will be also very useful if you can get a copy and refer to the Buku Panduan untuk memutuskan undi ragu. Okay, I will talk more about this Buku Panduan later in my presentation for counting agents. Next slide. Thank you. Now, some important rules to take note of for PACAs. Okay. Now, please take note that the presiding, okay, there is a presiding officer, okay, whom you need to report to whenever you are reporting for PACA duty. Okay, known as the presiding officer or the Ketua Tempat Mengundi, or in short, we call him KTM. Okay, all right. But so the KTM basically, very briefly, is a election official that is appointed by the EC through the Pegawai Pengurus, okay, which is another election official under the Election Commission. Now, he has an important role here also because all the Ketua Tempat Mengundi or KTM must, okay, they must allow PACAs to observe and monitor the polling process, okay. right? And I'd like to just highlight for your attention what PACAs are not permitted to do, okay, under important rules, okay, what you're not permitted to do once you enter the saluran, okay, enter the saluran. Now, firstly, you're not allowed to communicate or permitted to communicate with any voters, okay, in a polling stream, okay, because this will compromise, or this is a violation, I would say, of the secrecy, the secrecy of the elections, okay, right? Number two, not permitted, yes, to use mobile phones or any electronic devices. I think this should be clear in the polling stream or saluran for them. Next, to touch any election documents or any items, okay, or utensils that are used in the polling stream without the permission of the KTM, okay. So don't touch anything, okay, the ballot paper or the daftar pemilih that is used by the client, don't, right? Please take note. And of course, since you're not allowed to use mobile phones or whatever, so you're not allowed to take any photos in the polling stream, right? Now, I just want to highlight to all of you, okay, the KTM's authority. As I mentioned earlier, the KTM or the presiding officer has a very important role, okay, because the KTM is actually in charge, okay, of the saluran, okay, a particular saluran, okay. So every saluran in the polling center, okay, where the voters are assigned to vote, will have a KTM, okay, who is in charge. He or she is responsible primarily to oversee and supervise what goes on in the saluran, okay. So and he has given the KTM is given a lot of authority, and it is important, okay, for PACAs to understand, at least to have some understanding about KTM's authority. Okay? So I just like to highlight this point here. Yes. Now this is the KTM's authority is okay, mostly found in the elections, or we call it the conduct of election regulations. We call it the 1981 regulations in short, which actually gives authority to the KTM. Okay. To order any, can you read here in the slide, to order any PACA to be removed, okay, if he or she has committed any misconduct. And obviously, when we talk about misconduct, this refers to what is up the slide here, where PACAs they violate the rules, okay, where they don't comply with the rules, so they can actually be removed, all right, or failure to obey any lawful order, okay, of the KTM, okay, which is also an offense, okay. So please take note, okay, of the KTM's authority here, okay. Next slide. Now, this is the main focus of my presentation, which will be to highlight to all of you the key issues of concern, okay, for PACAs, okay, all right. So the first issue of concern is the 2 hours minimum shift requirement, okay. All right, that is the point. Next point, the usage of mobile phones in the saluran, okay, and then the two important borans, okay, or forms that the PACA, the Borang 13 is important for the polling agent and Borang 14 for the counting agent. So I will elaborate later on in my presentation, yeah. And the next point, the next key issue of concern, of course, as Danish, the moderator, has mentioned about COVID-19 guidelines, okay. There's something also we need to update ourselves. Next, dealing with malpractices and violations. This is very, very important, yeah. What polling agent and counting agent must do, okay, when they're dealing with any malpractices or violation. And the last point, actually, the last key issue of concern is undi ditolak, okay, or rejected ballots, okay. What CA stands for, counting agents need to know. So these are 6 key issues of concern, which I will address, okay, accordingly, yeah. All right, and this is just the photo of a saluran, yeah, just for your reference. Okay, let's address the first issue of concern, which is the issue of the 2 hours minimum shift for polling agent, especially. Yeah? This is an issue that affects polling agents mostly. Yeah? Also based on my own experience as a PACA. So it is actually a usual practice over the previous elections, okay, where you have several number of polling agents and counting agents who are actually specifically assigned to each one of them to a 2-hour shift. Okay, so that is the minimum shift for each polling agent and also a counting agent after that. Now, why is this important? Because the law provides for this 2-hour shift, minimum 2-hour shift, which is as mentioned here in the slide, Section 14(1)(a) of the Election Offences Act. Now, this section, if you read the section carefully, it provides that every polling agent or counting agent now shall act or be present at the polling station. Okay, so be present at the polling station refers to the polling agent, or shall attend the counting of the votes would refer to the counting agent. At the polling station, of course, for at least, now this is I underline this words here, at least 2 hours, very important. Okay, that means they must be at least, they must serve as a polling agent or count for at least 2 hours. All right. And Section 14(1)(a) goes on to say in the next point, also provides that his replacement. So every polling agent, once they have fulfilled the 2-hour minimum shift, then there must be another polling agent as the replacement. Now, Section 14(1)(a) clearly states that his replacement shall only be admitted to that polling station upon, okay, I stress here, upon expiration of the 2-hour period. Again, the 2-hour period is expressly mentioned in Section 14(1)(a). Now, if you look at Section 14(1)(a) as a whole, it seems very clear, isn't it? How as to the 2 hours minimum shift, there should be no issue, right? However, there have been questions and issues raised regarding the 2-hour minimum shift, which I would like to address in the next slide. Okay. Now, in relation to the 2 hours minimum shift, okay, some questions have been raised, okay, which is here in the slide, whether or not, okay, the first question actually that is often raised actually is whether the KTM can ask the polling agent whose 2 hours shift has already expired, yeah, which is what is clearly stated in Section 14(1)(a) just now, which I mentioned. Now, can the KTM ask the polling agent whose 2-hour shift have already expired to leave? That's the issue, to leave the polling stream before the next replacing polling agent. Now, is that something that is allowed? Can the KTM do so? Now, my view, at least here, okay, this is my view now, is no, because if we follow strictly what is stated in Section 14(1)(a), the KTM actually cannot, has no authority to do so, you know, if you follow strictly the law, strictly speaking, okay? So that is the response to the first question. All right, and the next question, in relation to the 2 hours minimum shift for the polling agent is this, okay? Whether the polling agent can file a complaint, okay, if the KTM does not comply. Yeah, if the KTM refuses to comply and asks, for example, the polling agent whose 2 hours shift has already expired to leave, what can the polling agent do? This is very important. Can polling agent file a complaint? What is the answer? Yes, in my view, yes, because if the polling agent has decided to file a complaint, the polling agents have a right, by the way, just for your attention, has a right to file a complaint to the KTM. And if the polling agent has decided to file a complaint, the KTM must record the polling agent's complaint. Okay, this is something that is also important to take note. Okay, because KTM must record any complaint or any written objection, which we call bantahan bertulis. Okay, I will elaborate on the bantahan bertulis later in my presentation. Now, all complaints and objections, okay, or bantahan must be recorded by the KTM in Boran 763. My apologies, in Boran SBR 763. All right, known as the Kertas Catatan KTM. All right, so these are two very commonly asked questions. And of course, take note here, if the polling agent is asked to leave the polling stream, okay, now if that happens, Then the polling agent, okay, this is some advice, okay, for the polling agent. Now, if the polling agent doesn't know what action to take, I would advise, okay, polling agents should immediately contact the Ketua PACA or the election agent for further action. Now, this advice actually, I also was briefed about it when I was a PACA, okay. We were always told that, okay, if there are any problems with KTM or you have any problems that you don't know what to do, please call the Ketua PACA immediately or the election agent. Next slide. Okay, usage of mobile phones, I also mentioned already under what PACAs are not permitted, if you remember in the previous slides. So the usage of mobile phones, of course, is not permitted once the PACAs are in the saluran. And please take note, this also applies to voters, to all the voters. Okay, the prohibition on mobile phones is also applicable to the voters. Now, why? Why is that the case? Is because PACAs must maintain the secrecy of election. All right, that is one of the main reason why usage of mobile phone is not permitted. This is also provided under the law, so important if you refer to Section 5 of the Election Offences Act. And of course, PACAs are under an oath to maintain the secrecy of the election. Okay, and they have to actually sign a Boran A. This another Boran A called Boran Sumpah Kerahasiaan. Okay, and of course, the next point. Yeah, it is an offense. Okay, it is an offense. Okay, if any PACA has violated their oath of secrecy, which is also provided under the law, under Section 5 sub 7, Election Offences Act. And yeah, also the penalty or the punishment is the imprisonment of 1 year or fine not exceeding 3,000. If this is enforced, of course, right? Yeah. Next point. Yeah. PACAs must be also vigilant. Yeah, so all those polling agent and counting agent in the saluran, you must always be very alert and vigilant to observing not only the KTM and the polling clerks, okay, who are doing their work, but also the voters. You must also observe the voters, okay, especially those who are snapping photos, which is not allowed, because it goes against the secrecy of the elections, right? Next point. Yeah, I'd like to come to this Boran, okay, Boran 13. Now, for polling agents, this is a form that you need to be familiar with, okay? So what PACAs need to know about this Boran 13? Yeah, the next point. Thank you. Now, under the regulations, yeah, the 1981 regulations, regulation specifically Regulation 24, subsection 1C, the Boran 13 has to be completed, okay? Prepared and certified by the KTM and signed by all the polling agents, okay? So the Boran 13 is actually, just very briefly, the Boran 13 actually is a statement about the total number of ballots that are in the ballot box, okay? Now that is of course after the voting has come to an end or close. So the KTM has to prepare it and it has to be signed by all the polling agents who are present. And the word that I underline here is important, who desires to sign. Now, is it compulsory? Is it a must to sign? The next point? No, the signing of Boran 13 is optional, no? Because of the word who desires to sign, which I underline. But even though it's optional, the next point, even though the signing by of Boran 13 is optional, polling agents are recommended to sign Boran 13, yeah? Of course, in fact, I signed Boran 13 myself when I was actually this is actually the last polling agent in the last 2-hour shift. So you are recommended, okay, to sign Boran 13 if the details are correct, okay, in the Boran 13 is correct, and most importantly, it must be certified by the KTM. Next point. Now, in relation to Boran 13, the polling agents also need to be aware, okay, need to know what the KTM can and cannot do. Okay, what are the do's and don'ts for KTM? Not permitted, okay, the don'ts actually, this is not, the KTM is not permitted to give a copy of Boran 13 to all the polling agents, okay? So this must be made very clear to polling agents, okay? The KTM are not permitted to give you a copy. even though you ask for it. But what the polling agent can do is get the permission of the KTM. Okay, so can you see here, with permission of the KTM, take down all the information in Boran 13 in the polling agent's own copy. Now, all polling agents are given copies of Boran 13, which is actually found in their what we call the PACA kit. Okay, so whenever you are appointed as a polling agent, you are given a PACA kit. Okay, with all the Boran 13 forms in it and other relevant forms as well. Next point. The next point, sorry.
Yeah, it's here.
Okay, Boran 13, what PAs need to, sorry, it's the same slide, Nanish. Yeah, thank you. So the next important form is actually known as Boran 14, which is the important form for counting agents now, okay? So Boran 14 is important because Boran 14 contains all the information about the what? The number of votes that is already obtained by all the candidates, or the candidate that is contesting in the saluran, okay, the candidates. And all this is tallied. Finally, it has to be tallied by the KTM, okay? This will become the final result, actually, of the counting of the votes in the particular saluran. Very important form. So the next point is this. Now, again, under the regulations, in particular, regulation 25, the KTM has to prepare sufficient what? Sorry, excuse me. Copies and certify all Boran 14, and it will be signed by all, counting agents who are present. Again, this is important, okay? KTM has to prepare the Boran 14. Next. KTM must give a copy, very important, okay? This is very important, okay? KTM must give a copy. There is no argument about this to all the counting agents, all right, who are present. Yep, thank you. Now, I like to go very quickly, in the interest of time, to COVID-19, yeah? Okay, COVID-19 and the SOPs. This is a recent development. Because just to give you a background, the next point about COVID-19 guidelines, it is known as the Garis Panduan Pencegahan COVID-19 bagi pelaksanaan pilihan raya. Okay, in BM, the original guideline is in Bahasa. Next, these are actually when we talk about COVID-19, they are actually additional guidelines by EC to ensure that the elections can be conducted safely. They do not, please take note, they do not in any way replace the existing election laws, okay? Because the existing election law stays as it is, right? They are just additional measures, and they are implemented by the EC, okay, in the following by-election and state elections, okay? Which is the last year, okay, in Chini by-election, Don Slim, and the Sabah state election, okay? Just a bit of background on COVID-19 guidelines. Next. Now, what is important actually is what PACAs need to observe and monitor, okay, in relation to the COVID-19 guidelines. Okay, what PACAs need to. Now, they need to observe and monitor, okay, in order to ensure that there is actually strict compliance and enforcement of the COVID-19 guidelines, okay, by the voters, the staff, the EC staff, officials, and the EC polling staff. All right, especially face masks, social distancing, all the standard SOPs, and of course hand sanitizers. Now, to observe and ensure, okay, the next point, that COVID-19 guidelines are not wrongly, this is important, or mistakenly applied, especially by the KTMs in the salurans, if you are observing as a polling agent and EC officials. Next, there are some issues of concern, obviously, with these guidelines. This is regarding the use of hand sanitizers by the voters. Now, the possible problems, okay, when the use of the hand sanitizing liquid may be mixed, okay, they usually maybe be accidentally mixed with the indelible ink, and you know that the voter has to dip the index finger into the indelible ink. So there might be a problem of it being mixed. Okay, there is an issue of concern actually. And then also the issue of the minimum 2-hour shift, okay, which I mentioned earlier, which still need to be complied by the KTM, okay, notwithstanding the COVID-19 guidelines. Okay, next. Dealing with, this is very important for polling PACAs with malpractices and violations. Next point. What can PACAs do? Okay, this is important. What can PACAs do? What action can they take? PACAs can make a written objection that is called bantahan bertulis, or file a complaint, okay, or aduan to the KTM. Okay, so KTM for what? For the following. Okay, any malpractices or violation that has occurred during the polling process in the polling stream itself. Yeah, so any kind of violation that happens, that occurred. And then the failure of the KTM or polling clerks to comply with the election law. Yeah, so even KTM, okay, is not immune from objection. Doesn't mean the KTM has the authority. He can do whatever he or she likes. All right. And what must the KTM do in response to any objections or complaints? They must deal with any written objection or complaint. Yeah, they must deal with it. All right. They cannot just sit on it. Okay, by PACA, they are required, okay, KTM is required to make a decision on the objections, any objection, written objections, please take note, and complaints. And KTM's decision is final, yeah, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, well, fortunately and unfortunately. And of course, this is just a note regarding the offenses, okay. If the KTM or polling clerk is found to have committed any offences, there is actually a penalty or punishment of an imprisonment, yeah, of 2 years of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years and a fine not exceeding 5,000. This is Section 4 of the Election Offences Act.
Folks, you have only 3 more minutes to conclude.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so since I have so little time, I'll go very quickly. So what is undi ditolak? This is something that counting agents need to be concerned with. So very quickly, any ballot that has been rejected is not a valid vote, okay? And this is the right of the KTM. The KTM has a right to reject any ballot paper, okay, which he thinks is not, okay, in the following situation under Regulation 25, okay? These are the following situations actually. I won't run through in detail, but if the ballot paper is not marked with the it's not stamped, rather with the official EC mark, where there's more than the vote is given to more than one candidate, I think that's obvious. That is obviously not a valid vote. Anything that is written or marked, you can only pangka, okay, on the ballot paper. That's the usual way to vote. Not writing anything, numbers or anything, not even your name, obviously. And where the ballot does not clearly indicate, this is where there is a problem called undi ragu, where there's some doubts. The next slide. Okay, so this is a sample ballot paper. So can you see the stamp here? Okay, the EC stamp must be there. Okay, all right, and then the pangka on the relevant whichever candidate that you choose. Okay, so very quickly, this is the Buku Panduan that KTM can rely on to decide whether a ballot should be accepted or rejected. It's called the Buku Panduan Memutuskan Undi Ragu. Very quickly, what counting agents need to observe: whether the KTM correctly decided whether a ballot paper should be rejected. Okay, so did the KTM act correctly or not? Whether the KTM, of course, referred to that Buku Panduan to make a decision, okay, whether a ballot paper should be rejected. Okay, and of course, KTM, as a matter of practice, do not immediately decide, because I also observed this during when I was counting agent. What would they usually do? The next point, the KTM would usually put the ballot paper that is doubtful as undi ragu before making any decision, right? Yeah. So examples, okay, this is a good example because you can see that okay, very quickly that there is some problem, right? Not really problem, but you have to decide. The counting agent must be very careful here to observe very carefully whether this ballot is accepted or rejected. Now, according to the guideline, the Buku Panduan, this is accepted because the pangka didn't cross the black line. And similarly for the other one, the circle. Okay. I'm running out of time, but don't worry, this is my last slide. Undi ditolak, what are the procedures? Okay, the KTM, okay, under Regulation 25, must show the ballot paper, okay, to all the counting agents and also get their views, okay, before making a decision. And any decision that is made is final, okay, in relation to whether the ballot is rejected or accepted. Thank you very much.